Meaghan Chitwood, and you are tuning in to From Overlooked to Consistently Booked, where we're talking to Jason Sanders about how he went from technician to business owner. And today we're going to talk about the systems you had to put in place to make this really work for you so that you knew the right service was being delivered and you could feel better about the control you were relinquishing. So tell us what systems have you put in place to make this work?
The first system is a departure from what's typical in the HVAC service industry, where you have, well, these guys are installers and these guys are technicians and these guys do this. I tell my guys, we are not that kind of company. You're going to wear all the hats here. If you are the one who's diagnosing the air conditioner, you are also the one who's going to have to fix it. Okay, and you can actually watch people when you tell them this. And their facial expression will tell you they're not a right fit for the job. So when I say to someone, yeah, you say you have 7 years experience making these diagnoses, but you didn't do the repairs. With my company, if you make the diagnosis, you're also going to do the repair and have to look at that air conditioner in case it didn't work. And now you're standing there going, oh, what did I just do? You know, and you can see their facial expressions. They go, oh, I'm not ready for that.
And what made you decide that that's how you were going to run it?
Necessity. So my first hire was, the one guy. And so if I got to go behind you and do it, I don't need you, So I need to trust that you're going to be there and able to make this repair, able to talk to the customer. And if it turns out that the diagnosis is such that we really need to start talking about a new air conditioning system, you also have to be able to go inside and talk to the customer about that comfortably. You are very likely going to be the one to come back and install it because you're all I got. And I'll come help you. But it wasn't just necessity. I also think, doesn't it feel a little impersonal if someone comes and says, I found some problems, but I got another guy coming and he's going to explain everything to you?
Well, I was actually thinking about it as you were saying it as kind of twofold. Yes, I agree with you. It's like, who's the next person who's going to come and show up? But also, you're building a closer relationship with the customer, being the same face coming back. So you're actually, that consistency can actually really help with the customer experience.
And even in the summer months when we get just so busy that we have to bring in subcontractors, if you were the one who made this transaction happen, I want you to go and introduce the subcontractors to the homeowner, make sure they got a phone number. If anything goes wrong, call us. I just feel like it's I think it's just poor form to let 7 or 8 different people handle one transaction. And that's the way a lot of the competitors do it. For example, they'll run to your house and they've come up with a problem with your air conditioner and they've identified it as 8 years old. Well, they really don't worry about doing an actual repair any longer. They come to your home and they stall and they bring in the closer. And the closer comes to your house and starts talking about the age of your air conditioner and how much you might need to replace it. And they start really applying that pressure. Customers will go for it. Then another completely different group comes in and does the actual work. And to me, that entire process just feels so, I hate to use the word dishonest, but there's just something about it that doesn't feel hometown to me. And I like hometown. Well,
I was going to say, it doesn't feel corporate. It feels corporate.
Yeah.
Because everybody's got their job and they're doing their job and you're not thinking about me, the customer, in that particular case. That's really interesting.
So that was the first system. The second system that I had to bring in was a simplified pay structure. So a lot of these companies will have a really high hourly rate, but then they do everything they can do to minimize the number of hours that you get, and you only get X amount of time on a call. And if you want to make any additional money, they have these little spiffs, they'll call them, but they're hard to make under the workload they give you. Other companies will give you, for example, a straight commission. Well, what do you do with that guy in the wintertime when you don't have any work for him? So we came up with a meager hourly rate. It's something, and then very basic, easy to understand flat commissions. And employees like that. Employees like to know I should expect about this much on my next paycheck, and it doesn't take a degree in engineering to figure out what my paycheck's going to look like. And the next one is, I call it the KISS method. I don't know where I first heard that, but it stands for keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
You don't have to overcomplicate things. If you don't load your employee up with a bunch of pressure, they don't have to memorize scripts and make sure they deliver every line and get grilled if the sale didn't go wrong. You're not going to win them all, but we'll win enough. And if I'm being real with you, those things right there take a lot of pressure off an employee, and you start to see the real person who you're going to be dealing with. Because we all know that it's a different person sometimes in the interview as opposed to when you put them in a truck and put them on the road. Well, disarming people by just saying, hey, look, we're people too. Let's keep it simple and just be honest with our customers and with ourselves. We're going to be okay. And then the last one was I kind of had to swallow a painful pill and just pay them well. If you don't pay for top people, you're not going to get top people. And that actually solved two problems. Now when I say, hey, I'm hiring, generally speaking, I'll have somebody call me in a day or two. I just put the word out and I'll have somebody call me. I don't really have to advertise for hiring positions any longer. So there you go.
One of the things that I have also found is that if you get really good people, they usually know really good people in the industry, right?
They do.
And you can go far as a small business owner, looking at less than 10 people. You can go really far with just who else do you know who's really awesome. And then it sounds like you've also created employees that are real advocates for the company in general, because you're letting them be them in the whole process. So those advocates can probably sell them before the interview even starts.
Yeah, and I didn't mention this is not, it's part of the process. I tell them, would you send you to your grandmother's house if you were out of state? And that's the guy that I want to go to and knock on every door. And my supply houses know it, my employees know it. And so I can tell you that there's been times when my supply houses have referred people to me. They're not really supposed to do that.
Yeah.
But, because they know what we're going to do and they know what we're not going to do.
Yeah. One thing I love about small business is that we can create whatever we want, right? It can be a little bit more expensive. You said pay them well, right? It can be a little bit more expensive, but we can create exactly what we want. How have you been through the whole creating the culture and what you want your company to be standing for?
Well, the first thing is, we really just beat into their heads that we don't do sales schools. We sometimes come in and we'll make fun of some of the things that they'll teach you to do in these sales schools. There's the 4-quarter trick. I don't know if you want to hear about the 4-quarter trick. We laugh about the 4-quarter trick, but it basically boils down to this, where you've put a bunch of pressure on a customer and they're feeling the pressure. And their little internal meter is telling them something doesn't quite add up. You're supposed to pull out 4 quarters and lay them on the table and get real serious and try to get real personal and say, can you afford $1 a day to make sure your family has blah, 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 blah. And we laugh about those things because on its face, it's absurd. And there are companies who push that. And you know why they push it? Because it works.
Yeah.
It does work. But we just think it's silly. The other thing that we really kind of try to do is when we're slow enough to do it, I try to take everybody to lunch. And we just laugh and have a good time. It feels more like, a band of brothers, in my shop than it feels like, a big corporate stuffy office.
Yeah.
And we like it that way. Well, I just feel like we get honesty.
Yeah, you really get to know everybody and get really honest feedback as well.
And I always try to be very approachable. I've worked for people who, I know this, at a company that I worked for before I came on board and was the manager there, the employees were making some serious mistakes and would do everything to make sure the boss didn't find out. So they were losing some profitability, paying for time that they should have been paying for because people were unapproachable. I just think that's an issue.
Well, and you mentioned a couple of episodes ago about how you allow people to make mistakes and you debrief on those. How have you created the system for people to feel comfortable saying, "Oops, I messed this one up. How do we ultimately fix it?"
Catch them in a few mistakes and let them see how you respond to it. Yeah. Let them see you're not going to beat them over the head with something. You're not going to show them the door. Just handle it.
And your last big system, how do you get that feedback so that you identify those things? Do you have a system for figuring out when something goes wrong?
Well, generally the guys will tell me.
Okay.
Customers will tell you a lot of times too. Customers are not usually afraid to call and make a complaint. We don't get a lot, and then we take those complaints and we take them all seriously. Sometimes, we had a customer, for instance, we put a new air conditioner in for him and he called, it ain't never worked right. And he was complaining and he was so upset about it. Well, come to find out, it was he changed the thermostat and he didn't program it properly.
Unfortunately, been there, done that.
Yeah, thermostats one of those things that, they can really get you.
Yes,
they can really get you. But we still don't try to make the customer feel stupid.
Yeah.
I empower my employees to know that if a customer's upset about something, they say to the customer, hey, let me call Jason and we're going to take care of it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, the first employee that I hired was just a temporary guy because it had to be a job that I needed help on. I made a huge mistake. I ran a screw right through somebody's air conditioner coil and lost all the refrigerant. And I did that on an air conditioner that was working. You know what I mean? I was there for a maintenance. How do you go up to your customer and say, hey, I need you to buy a new one? You don't do that.
No.
You don't do that. I had to go to the customer and say, hey man, I made a bad mistake. It's going to be inconvenient for a day because we're going to have to bring the part in, but we're going to fix it. Customers don't get nearly as upset when you say, but I'm going to fix it.
Well, not nearly upset. And I would venture to say you probably have a customer for life.
We do. That guy still
100%. I always tell people, don't run away from don't run away from that, because it's your biggest opportunity to build out a raving fan.
I always tell my employees there is almost nothing that's so bad that we can't fix it.
Yeah.
Just last week, we just gave a guy a new air conditioner because we had a consistent problem with it. We don't know what it is. We believe it's a manufacturer issue, but we just told the customer, say, hey man, we're tired of dealing with this. And what I don't mean to say we're tired of you calling. We're tired of you having to put up with it. We're just gonna put you a new one in here. Are you okay with that? You know what that guy said? Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Well, these are fantastic systems that you have created to really make this work. And next week, we're going to talk about your leadership and how that creates more referrals for you ultimately, which we've already gotten a few of those nuggets, but I want to wrap that up for everyone else as well. Thank you so much for tuning in to From Overlooked to Consistently Booked. And again, next week, we're going to continue with Jason talking about how his leadership has created a very referable business.